The night began with laughter, loud, joyful, unstoppable laughter. The kind that rises from the backyard of a home where love has settled deep into the walls. Balloons bobbed in the warm air, children chased each other around folding tables, and the smell of grilled chicken and birthday cake drifted across the fence line. It should have been perfect. It was perfect. Until the moment everything shifted with a single phone call. The Johnsons were well known in the neighborhood, polite, hardworking, always waving at passers-by. Marcus Johnson, the father, was the kind of man who carried both strength and gentleness in equal measure. Tall, focused, disciplined, yet he had the softest smile when he looked at his daughter, Ava, who was turning 6 that evening. His wife, Danielle, had spent the whole week preparing the decorations, calling family, baking cupcakes, and picking out the perfect unicorn-themed dress. Friends were arriving, cousins were dancing, music was playing at a safe, small speaker volume, the kind you'd expect on any birthday evening. Not too loud, not disruptive, just normal life. But it takes only one person to decide that your joy is too much, and that person lived right next door. Her name was Patricia Langley, who saw herself as the unofficial rule enforcer of the neighborhood. She monitored lawns for weeds, measured fence heights, and scolded teenagers for walking too fast past her house. And tonight, she stood in her kitchen window, arms crossed, eyes narrowed at the colorful celebration next door. The laughter annoyed her. The dancing irritated her. The sight of the Johnson family having a good time seemed to twist something inside her. But what bothered her most, the thing she refused to admit even to herself, was that this black family dared to enjoy themselves, without her permission, without concern for her opinion, without fear of her disapproval. To her, every sound was exaggerated. Every laugh sounded louder. Every child's squeal felt like a disruption to her perfect routine. She didn't step outside. She didn't speak to the family. She went straight to her phone. Patricia's voice trembled with theatrical urgency as she spoke into the receiver. "There's a disturbance happening next door," she told the dispatcher. "A loud, chaotic party. I don't feel safe. There are too many people. They're shouting. I think something dangerous might be happening." None of it was true. But she knew what would happen when she used those words. She knew "I don't feel safe" carries weight. She knew the stereotype society believes far too easily. The dispatcher asked routine questions, trying to understand the situation, but Patricia kept adding pressure, phrases filled with coded language meant to escalate the situation without ever explicitly saying anything that could be traced as bias. "I've never seen these people before," she lied. "They look suspicious. I think something illegal might be going on." The dispatcher, following protocol, finally responded, "Officers are on their way," and Patricia hung up with a thin-lipped smile of satisfaction. Back in the Johnsons' backyard, the celebration carried on. Without the slightest idea of what was unfolding blocks away, Marcus was flipping burgers while teasing his younger brother about his poor grill skills. Danielle was helping Ava cut her cake, her phone recording the moment for family who couldn't attend. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was carefree. Everyone was safe. But good moments don't always get a warning before they're taken away, because 2 police cruisers were already turning onto the street. The sound of sirens was faint at first, so faint that the children didn't even react. But the adults stiffened. Sirens never sound friendly when they come close. They're loud, urgent, and unforgiving. Marcus looked toward the street, confused. Danielle's laugh faltered. A cousin whispered, "Are they coming here?" Within seconds, the flashing lights painted the neighborhood. In streaks of red and blue, the Johnsons froze, unsure. The music was already low, but several guests rushed to turn it off entirely. The mood shifted instantly from celebration to fear. No one was doing anything wrong, but that didn't matter, because someone had called the authorities. Officer Stevens and Officer Morales stepped out of their vehicles with caution, but not hostility. They didn't have their hands on their weapons, but they didn't relax completely either. They had received a report, one that made the situation sound potentially dangerous. "Evening," Officer Stevens called out. "We received a call about a disturbance." Marcus stepped forward, hands visible, posture calm, voice steady. "Officers, this is my daughter's birthday party. Everything is under control. What seems to be the problem?" Before they could answer, Patricia came marching out of her house, lips pinched, pointing at the Johnsons like she had uncovered a crime scene. They were being loud. I'm allowed to make a report. But the officers remained patient, repeating the same response each time. There was no disturbance. There was no danger. They weren't breaking any laws. Meanwhile, Marcus turned back to the guests, his family, friends, neighbors who still stood watching, unsure how to proceed. He removed his police hat slowly and let out a quiet breath. "I'm sorry," he said, voice steady but tired. "I didn't want tonight to become this." Danielle slipped her arm around him. "You didn't do anything wrong," she assured him softly. But he shook his head. "I know how these situations can go. I've seen them from both sides." He took a moment to look around, at the scared children, the uneasy adults, the birthday decorations swaying in the warm breeze. "This shouldn't have happened," he murmured. Ava stepped toward her father, her tiny unicorn headband slightly crooked. "Daddy," she said quietly, "did we do something bad?" Marcus knelt instantly, his face softening. "No, baby." "Not at all. You did everything perfect." "Then why were the police here?" He swallowed gently before answering. "Because someone made a mistake." "But it's over now. Everything's okay." Ava nodded slowly and wrapped her arms around his neck. He lifted her, holding her close, grounding himself in the warmth of her little hug. The guests relaxed a little at the sight. Some returned to their seats. Some whispered reassurances to their kids, and the tension loosened piece by piece. But the party spirit had dimmed. Laughter came harder. Smiles felt forced, and every guest kept glancing toward the flashing lights in front of the house. Minutes later, the officers returned with Patricia in tow. Her face was red, part anger, part embarrassment, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "I still think this whole thing was inappropriate," she declared loudly, as if trying to save face. "You people!" She caught herself just in time, but the slip was noticeable. Marcus straightened. "You people?" he repeated quietly. Patricia stuttered. I didn't mean..." "I meant the party." "The party people." Danielle crossed her arms. "Say what you really mean, Patricia." "I meant the noise," Patricia insisted. "This neighborhood has standards." Officer Stevens intervened before the argument escalated. "Ma'am, enough. We've concluded there's no violation. This is a legal gathering. You made a report that was inaccurate." Patricia gasped dramatically. "Inaccurate?" "I know what I heard," Morales explained gently but firmly. "Ma'am, the noise level doesn't even reach half of what's considered a disturbance. And there's no issue with the number of people. You misinterpreted the situation." Patricia shook her head in disbelief. No matter how clear the truth was, she couldn't accept it, not with the entire neighborhood watching. She wrapped herself in her indignation like a shawl. "I only did what any responsible resident would do," she said sharply. "I care about this community." Stevens looked around at the crowd. "Well," he said, "since everything here checks out, we'll be clearing the call. Officer Johnson." He nodded respectfully. "Enjoy your daughter's birthday." The officers returned to their vehicles. As they drove away, the flashing lights faded, taking some of the tension with them. But the unease remained. Because everyone knew the real problem hadn't been solved. Patricia lingered several moments longer, scowling at the yard, the people, the decorations, the joy she had tried to smother. And then she turned and stormed back into her house, slamming the door behind her. With the officers gone, conversations began to flow again, soft at first, then more confidently. "This is unbelievable." "She really called 911 over this?" "Thank God Marcus handled it the way he did." "She could have gotten someone hurt." As the adults talked, the children returned to their games. Cautiously at first, then with growing excitement. Slowly, the music was turned back on, just a little louder than before. Danielle took Marcus's hand. "Are you okay?" Marcus hesitated. "I'm fine. I've dealt with worse." He paused. "But not at home. Not with Ava watching." Danielle looked at him with tenderness and sadness. "This is our home, and we're not letting anybody take that from us." But Marcus wasn't angry. He was thinking. The weeks after the HOA meeting were different, quieter, kinder, more connected. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now waved at the Johnsons, stopped to chat, brought over baked goods, or invited Ava to their children's play dates. It wasn't pity. It was solidarity. Marcus noticed it every morning when he stepped outside to get the paper. People smiled more. They asked how the family was doing. They apologized for not speaking up sooner. Something in the neighborhood had shifted. And Patricia? For a while, she stayed inside, curtains closed, blinds drawn. Maybe out of embarrassment, maybe out of anger. Maybe both, but the important part was this. She stopped calling. She stopped policing everyone. She stopped acting like she owned the neighborhood. Her silence for once was a gift. One evening, Marcus sat on the porch watching Ava ride her bike up and down the driveway. Danielle brought out 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "How does it feel?" she asked. "How does what feel?" "To know you changed the neighborhood," Marcus smiled softly. "I didn't do it. Alone." "No," she agreed. "But you showed them how to stand up. How to handle conflict with dignity. How to stay strong without being harsh." He took a sip of cocoa. "This is our home. I want Ava to grow up somewhere she feels safe." "And she will," Danielle said. "Because of you." A small knock suddenly came from the fence gate. Marcus frowned, standing. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Patricia. Not angry, not screaming, but holding something in her hand, a poorly wrapped envelope. Her eyes were tired. Lines of stress etched deeper than before. She swallowed hard. "I came to say something," she muttered. Marcus waited. She exhaled shakily. "I was wrong." The words sounded painful, like they were dragged out of her throat. "I let my anger, my assumptions, get the best of me," she continued. "I shouldn't have called the police. I shouldn't have treated your family that way. I shouldn't have treated anyone that way." Marcus was speechless. Patricia extended the envelope. "It's a written apology," she said. "For you, for your wife, for your daughter, and for the HOA. I'm trying to do better." He accepted the letter. Patricia nodded stiffly and turned to leave. But Marcus spoke before she reached the gate. "Thank you," she stopped. Surprise? He wasn't excusing her actions. He wasn't pretending. They hadn't hurt. But he acknowledged the courage it took to admit fault. Patricia gave a small nod and walked home quietly. Danielle stepped beside Marcus. "That was unexpected," she whispered. "Maybe people can change," he replied. "Maybe," she said. With the right push, Marcus stood near the grill, smiling as he watched Ava run with her new friends. Danielle looped her arm around his waist. "Looks like peace," she said. He nodded. "It looks like home."